I feel good, even though I shouldn't. I'm chilling so hard, couldn't tell you where the hood is. I'm looking like $1,000,000, sucker.
Hi, welcome back to This Week in Music. I'm Ian Rogers. Our guest today is music manager Brian Klein. Brian manages Joe Purdy, Fitz and the Tantrums, some other incredible artists, and wanted to talk to Brian today because what he's done with Joe and Fitz and others is representative of the sort of the new model of success in the music business. So I wanted to dive into that with him today. You know, on this show, we don't want to just talk about the way the music business was or the decline in CD sales. You know, we want to spend a lot of time looking forward and taking a look at what comes next. So I asked Brian to tell us to join us and tell us a little bit about what he's done with those artists. Thanks for coming, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
So you know, when I first met you and we came into our office and I told you what we were doing with Topspin, and I said, you know, we just believe that there is sort of this new middle class of artists emerging, and you can leverage digital and you can leverage, you know, niche outlets in a way that you couldn't in the past. You know, you let me say my piece, and then you said, man, we've been doing this for 6 years, where you been? So
I was excited that, you know, you were showing me all these tools in one spot, and I felt like out of necessity over the years that I've been kind of scotch taping those things together to make things work for my artists.
And how did you start out with that? I mean, did you go out and say, I'm going to find a new model, or?
No. I was frustrated with working with labels, and I'd found myself meeting with Joe Purdy one day, and he wasn't necessarily looking for a manager, he needed just some help. And I told him, well...
And who is Joe? I mean, I wasn't familiar with Joe until I met you, but I found out that by the time I met you, he'd already been quite successful. So what kind of music and where is he from?
He's a singer-songwriter. He's from Arkansas. He'd been living in Los Angeles for probably about 6 years when I met him, and lucked out with a few key placements on television on the TV show Lost and Grey's Anatomy. So he sort of had a base already set up and some income from some iTunes sales. And at that point, I think he had 2 records out on iTunes, and we were ready to release the third one.
So he had, before you met him, on his own, managed to make a couple of records, get them up on iTunes, and get a couple placements as well.
Yeah, and that was through CD Baby. You know, released his music for him digitally, and I think with the help of his publisher at the time, he managed to get a couple of these placements. So, but that kind of helped him gather a base of hardcore fans, and obviously touring and playing Los Angeles, he had somewhat of a story going. I didn't really know who he was either. His publisher gave me a CD and I really liked it, and he asked me to meet with him.
Gotcha. So where do you go from there? I mean, now how many albums does Joe have?
We've put out 12 records.
Wow. In how many years?
In 6 years.
That alone is kind of new model-esque to me. I mean, you know, even Bowie was an album a year. So,
right.
So 2 albums a year is what Joe's doing?
Well, you know, if you remove the old machine and you decide as an artist, I've written this record, I've recorded this record, I've got the artwork, why can't I just put it out? And if you own your own masters and you have the capability of calling your own shots and deciding, okay, the clock starts right now, we release the record, and you know, I'll work it for as long as I want to, or it'll just be a slow burn for years, however you want to do it, that gives you a lot of freedom. And my challenge up front was to start to catch up with all of his albums, because we finished one and we were about to release it, and he quickly went in the studio and recorded another one. And that one was on deck. And by the time that one was still on deck, we did a third record.
Did you feel like maybe you weren't maximizing them, or did it seem like the right pace? You know what I mean? Like you're not letting them simmer for long enough? Or?
It seemed like the right pace for us. For him as an artist, this is what he wanted.
Right.
And I think the way we released it, we didn't front load it with a ton of press and radio or anything like that. It wasn't overdone. It was, the music spoke for itself. And the way it came out, it was kind of like eating fresh sushi. And we were able to feed the fans kind of quickly, let them get really excited about it, and also tell them, guess what, there's another one coming down the line. And we had a story behind every one of them. It wasn't as though, oh, he went into the same studio over and over.
What do you mean you had a story behind him?
Well, the one after the one I was originally putting out, it was called You Can Tell Georgia. He recorded in London, or outside of London, in 3 days. The one after that was Paris in the Morning. We recorded that 2.5 months later in Paris. So he started kind of taking his records on the road and developing this story along with it. And it kept people excited and engaged and on his team.
So you think that story, both the pace and the fact that there was, I don't know if thematic's the right word, but there was a story to go along with it, kept people's attention?
Yeah, I think people were just rooting for him, and they continue to root for him. Every time we put something out, there's something behind it. People are waiting for it to come out, months ahead, or sometimes we just hit him over the head. Like last summer, we released a record called 4th of July, and it was something that he'd spent a lot of time on, and people knew he was working on it. And it was very hard on him to record this one because he played every instrument on it. He had another record in him, and he didn't want to spend as much time on it, so we rented a house in New Mexico for 3 days and knocked that one out and gave it away for free to all of his fans as a thank you in December for Christmas.
Gotcha.
So, he goes by his own rules, and his fans really respond to it.
And how can you say how many tracks he's sold on iTunes to date?
We've done over 1 million. Between his back catalog and the recent records in the U.S., over 1 million.
And what are you doing on the promotion side? You mentioned the what his publisher had done in terms of television placements and that sort of thing. What else are the things that bring fans in, or are you really just sort of mining this existing fan base and growing it little by little?
I think we're just going around the mountain slowly, and we luck out from time to time with a placement on a television commercial or another TV show, and that definitely brings more people in, but it's really about the music, it's about the hard work, it's about getting out there on the road, and other people talking about it. I think that's been it.
Well, it was definitely an eye-opener for me because as I've said to you before, I consider myself fairly in the know when it comes to artists, and until you and I met, I hadn't heard of Joe, and here's this artist earning a living on his iTunes sales, and really doing things a totally different way, and then I thought it was amazing that you sort of spun that into another, perhaps even less likely artist with Fitz and the Tantrums, which I think is an amazing story. I mean, here you have this artist who is, I don't think he'd mind me saying, not a young man,
right.
Been in the business a long time, doing sort of a white soul singer type of routine. Is that fair to say?
Not the whole time, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, but
recently.
Yeah, well, not his whole career, but that's sort of what he did with this one particular act that stuck with people. He made this music that resonated with people even more than he thought it would. Correct. Right. And then you guys, really took it and worked it and worked it and worked it and worked it until it touched a lot of people. How do you get rolling with something like that? What's the beginning of that story from your perspective?
Well, the beginning is my partner Lisa Newpoff, who I've been close with for years and done other projects with, was approached by Fitz about this project, and she came to me because she knew that I had experience with more of the direct-to-fan marketing and sales, and she and I were like the first two fans of the band, and we started out with just an EP, and our goal at that point was to get as many people to hear it as possible, whether that's just tastemakers, the immediate fans, wherever we can get it. And so we started out probably, just making sure that it was available on iTunes, giving away free tracks through Topspin, just pumping up the LA base. Luckily for us, we got involved with KRCW.
How did you do that? I mean, you made that sound easy, and I think for a lot of artists, that's one of the hardest parts.
Well, that was Lisa, really. I mean, she had a relationship over there, and she kept hammering them, and they soon invited us to come in for Morning Becomes Eclectic. But we had been making some noise in town and playing a lot of shows, and the reputation was the live band was incredible.
Right, and I guess I feel like we kind of skipped over that part. The music is great, and the live show was incredible. And these are seasoned performers.
Yeah.
That really knew their strength was their live show.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the band had played in other huge bands at one point, whether they were hired or a part of something. And Fitz, he's just a hard worker. He's probably the hardest worker I know. And for close to his whole career, he'd been trying different things that got close, got shut, door shut in his face by major labels. Typical story. But I think he finally found his true voice in what he wanted to do as a frontman.
Right.
He made a living, writing commercials, and he parlayed that into investing into his band.
Gotcha. Is Joe Purdy a similarly hard worker? I mean, we had.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't think Fitz is harder work than.
Right. No. The only reason I ask is, we had Andy Gould on the program, and he had one of my favorite quotes, which is "Never work harder than your act," which I
live by that. And
you seem to have two hard worker self-starters, people that have expectations set in the right place. Mm-hmm. That seems like a huge asset to me.
Well, that's the only way for anything to be successful. I've worked with a lot of young bands, and probably they were too young for their own good at the time and where they were in their career, and they got a lot of money from major labels, and that's how we all lived at that point. And it ended up just failing because they weren't ready for it. And I ended up working harder than them, and in some cases, and it hurt me a lot.
Right.
But it taught me a lot as a manager. But
Where do you go from that first EP with Fitz? Because my recollection is, you were releasing the same EP in different ways.
It kind of was like that. We lucked out with Flogging Molly wanting to take us out on the road, which, if you just listen to that, it didn't make any sense. But
that's not a natural fit from my perspective.
It's not, but you put Hepcat in the middle.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it's an interesting bill.
Right.
So Fitz, who is now funding this whole project out of his pocket, puts the band on the road with Flogging Molly and Hepcat, and we do the West Coast. And all of a sudden, we found an opportunity to reach a lot more people, and collecting email addresses and giving those people free songs.
And how valuable is a run like that, right? Because you've heard, you hear differing things from people. That being third bill on a local tour is not necessarily worth the money you're going to put out there. But how valuable is it truly?
How valuable do you want it to be? What are you going to put in? How are you going to parlay that into a story? All of a sudden, we're playing the Greek Theater, and we're able to tell KCRW that, or we're able to tell local press that, or we're able to tell somebody else.
So even though you're third on the bill, you're saying, "Hey, I'm playing the Greek," and that's exactly what
playing
you're going
Red
for.
Rocks, and
right.
It made the band a much better and stronger live band to begin with. And then they get off stage, and yes, they're first of three, but they're at the merch booth trying to sign and meet everybody.
Yeah.
And so you just have to work it hard, and you have to be great.
Yeah, the hard work thing just keeps. I think if there's two major intangibles, right, that keep coming up when I talk to people about this topic. Mm-hmm. One is the music has to be great, the live show has to be great, and those kind of go together. And the other is the hard work. And I guess if there's a third, it's patience, right? So
yeah, nobody's going to do it for you, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it didn't happen overnight for Fitz. We spent a good year and a half working this thing. So
working on an EP?
No, just working the EP, which usually.
That's what I mean. You're working this one. How many songs?
It's a 5-song EP.
So you got a year and a half working these 5 songs.
Yeah. And so.
And how much, if you can say, how much money spent over that time? Like you said, Fitz is bankrolling this himself. There's no label through any of that year and a half, right?
Right.
So he's got his own overhead to worry about and a band,
right.
Presumably some mouths to feed, and
yeah, it's probably close to, I'd say $75,000 to $100,000,
right?
Depending on what the first thing that we did. We got 2 placements on the TV show Damages. I took that money and went and shot 3 videos back to back.
Right.
And in one spot that showcased a live band, and it gave us a tool to start working with.
So you took that money, and instead of shooting 1 video, you went and shot 3 videos with that money in the same location, same equipment, same crew.
Yeah.
And it's like they do with the Lord of the Rings type of movies.
Exactly. We were doing. We had a ring. But so we started the year off. Just hard work, a lot of local work, and then into the Flogging Molly tour, and then lucked out again and got out with Maroon 5 and did a college arena tour with them. And at this point, during Flogging Molly, we had released the record again, the EP, to a whole set of new people. We put a press release out. We're just coming out with this thing.
So wait. You've already released it on iTunes. You've given away all of it or some of it for free?
Some of it for free.
Some of it for free. and now you're just going to repackage it and release the same EP again and put a press release out that says new EP.
If a tree falls in the woods and those people weren't there to hear it, then
it's
new. And you switch the date on iTunes, what have you.
Every day of the week, there's more people who haven't heard you than who have. So why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had our hardcore supporters. We had some more hardcore supporters, and then when it came for the Maroon 5 tour, we decided, let's just give this thing away for free to anybody that we can. We were closing out the year. We wanted to reach a certain amount of fans online. And every night from the stage, Fitz was telling the audience, go to our website, download the EP for free.
Right.
We love you.
And are you catching any shit from fans who paid for it, going, man, I paid?
Because it's not like it's a label doing that. It's not like it's the man. Everybody's there to support. Recently we had a sale on iTunes. It went down to $6.99, and we told our fans, hey, if you have it already, tell your friends. And they're all just cheering them on, and we sold an extra probably 1,500 records last week because of it.
Wow.
So.
Wow. So you mentioned earlier, you've got lucky again by getting the Maroon 5 tour, but I don't think you luck in, you don't trip over a Maroon 5 tour. I'm guessing that's something that managers do, and you're being humble.
No, I had nothing to do with it. It was the singer of Maroon 5 was getting a tattoo, and the tattoo artist was playing the EP in the background. He said, "Who's this?" And he found us.
So it is.
So it has nothing to do with me.
It is actually luck. I guess we need to add that on early to the hard work and the good music. And all right,
it's reaching people.
Right.
And we lucked out again. Mark Ronson played us on his radio show over and over and had great things to say about the band. So that was like a cool stamp of approval early on as well.
Right.
So, we're trying to gain as much momentum throughout that year, and KCRW is behind us, KEXP is behind us.
KEXP is, for those who don't know, and KCRW as well. It's just so people who...
Yeah, they're just probably the two independent radio stations in the country that we wanted to be on. They are the tastemakers as far as we were concerned.
And they also both have good online audience as well, so there is an international audience with both of those channels.
Huge.
Yeah. And what about when you've got an artist like that, and you're mentioning sort of the tastemakers that they touch that help make that spread happen? Are you thinking about really, are you just sort of like trying to hit anybody you can, or are you strategically going, wow, if Mark Ronson's playing us, then we can move on to KCRW, and then we can move on to KEXP?
I think we're just trying to get to a critical mass. I think it's about finding the fans, getting in touch with them, having the conversation with them, and having them have the conversation with everybody else.
Right.
I think that's the most important thing. The things along the way, like KCRW or Mark Ronson or whoever.
Did you do any television at this point? Like, what television? Have you done the sort of Jimmy Kimmel, Carson Daly type of stuff?
That was much later.
Much later. Okay.
More recent and much later. At this point, we were still kind of trying to, become a band and have everybody know that we're a band.
Gotcha. So what happens next then? Can bring us forward a little further.
Well, we got into 2010, and Fitz was starting to worry that we haven't found our solution for distribution, meaning if it was a label or some sort of outside funding, because he's kind of come to the end of his rope with it. And we just kept pedaling forward and forward into South by Southwest. And at that time, we were having somebody at DangerBird Records represent us for film and television, and they were getting the licenses in for us. And that was part of our strategic revenue source at that point,
right,
to try to keep this thing going. And we were invited to play DangerBird's South by Southwest party, and we went in there and killed it. And the next morning, I got a call from the owner of the label, Jeff Castellez, saying, we got to talk. Can you come in? And so my partner Lisa and I went and had coffee with him one night, the next night, and he said, look, I had to see it live. I want to offer you guys a deal. Let's start talking. And
Gotcha.
At that point, it was like, okay.
Right. So he wrote you a check for like $2-3 million bucks.
7.5, I think it was, yen.
Right.
It's we have to remember, at that point we were just looking for somebody to take the pressure off.
Yeah.
And to help us grow this thing, and that's what they did. They took the pressure off of Fitz financially. We quickly, at that point, got on the road with Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, which was another great tour to have.
Right. And please only share what you can share. But what does it mean to take the pressure off? Are you talking about an advance, monthly, something taking care of the band? Like, what is it that an artist at that level, needs?
Well, look, 10 years ago, an artist at that level would have probably gotten $450,000, a van, gear, and everything else. We did a smart deal with DangerBird where we didn't front load it. They don't have the money to front load it, but they gave us enough to put a little bit back in his pocket from what he spent, and then also take over the marketing and promotion responsibilities.
Right.
And that's, financial.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot and has continued to help.
Good. How were you, before, how were you handling the marketing and promotion? Was that coming out of management, or did you guys hire third parties to do that?
That was us, generally, Lisa and I, and Fitz, and the band. It's anything that we can do to grow our social networks, to grow our online base with our email bank through Topspin, and it was just, word of mouth. Like, it's great music, everybody, talk about it.
Right,
and
so you bring it in DangerBird, and Jeff puts his team on it in the marketing and promotion side, and do you see, where did you go from there? Was it then time for new product? What did you do then?
We just started finishing the full-length record in January of 2010, so we had it kind of in the bag when we were signing with DangerBird. At that point, it was like, let's get a release date, which ended up being last August, I think it was 24th, and let's prep a single. And at that point, we're like, okay, what are we going to do at radio? This is great. KCRW and the Independents were playing us, but we had no idea what was going to happen at AAA or even Hot AC. And we worked the single Money Grabber until now. It's been a year.
Wow.
And the
who
song's become
worked
a hit.
it? DangerBird?
It was DangerBird, the radio department, Jenny Sparandero, she's amazing, and she and whoever else she hired outside of that built this thing on the road. But not without the band, stopping in every single city that they can get into, whether it was in a van or on a bus in the dead of winter, and playing 2 to 3 radio sessions a day.
Wow.
Before their gig.
Wow.
And it's grueling work.
Right, so you got a band out there, you're in a van, you're driving from town to town, you roll into the town, and you're playing a morning show even?
Yeah.
And yeah, wow.
They were forced to go into a bus in January, A, because of the weather, and B, because of the schedule. It was insane. You couldn't go from one city to the other without an overnight drive. But they'd get in, they'd load into a place at like 9:30 in the morning, play a short performance and an interview, and probably go over to a record store next, and maybe even another radio station at the end of the day.
Then play a show at night,
Then play a
get
show.
on the bus and do it all again.
Yeah, and they've been doing that nonstop. We've sold 72,000 records as of today.
Wow.
Which is pretty remarkable in these times.
And you said it came out August of last year.
24th, yeah.
August of last year.
On one single and touring. So it's,
And you've done, and in that time now, you've done a little bit of television. One of the things that I thought was so interesting, when I read what Fitz had written to Bob Lefsetz, he was mentioning Live from Daryl's House.
Live from Daryl's House was incredible. That was one thing.
Tell people what Live from Daryl's House is.
Live from Daryl's House is genius because Daryl's Daryl Hall, right? And he has a house outside of Connecticut, New York, and he has new and old artists come in, and they'll play like 4 of the artist songs and 4 Daryl songs, make a meal, have fun. It's amazing. And
I want to go so badly.
I went. I think I learned about it maybe 6 months to a year before we actually did it, and I didn't know how to get in touch with them, so I went to livefromdaryl.com or whatever the email the web address was, and did a who is search and got their phone number, and
genius.
Yeah, well, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I got in touch with them, and at that point they were done for the year. It wasn't until the following season they asked us to do it, and it was incredible. Every single show that we played after that, dozens and dozens of people would come up. We saw you from Live at Daryl's. We saw, and it honestly meant more, and it still does, than most late night television shows. And not that I would ever not do those. Those are fantastic. But
it's incredible to me because a lot of people, I've talked to people a lot about Live from Daryl's House, and people really don't know about it. And to hear that story, and to, obviously, Kimmel, Carson Daly, like everyone, these are things that are household names. Live from Daryl's House, people don't know what it is. When you tell them what it is, they go, what? Where do you watch it? How many people watch it? They think it's in some stinky corner of the internet.
Right.
So to hear that it had more of an impact, I guess it's kind of about a qualified audience, huh? You might have a smaller audience, but they're people who actually love music.
Right.
And they get turned on.
And it's really, that kind of show is only about music, and it's for hardcore music fans, new and old. So whether he's having, Smokey Robinson on or Fitz and the Tantrums, all those fans are kind of moving towards him and what he's doing.
Right.
But it definitely gave us a lot of new fans and a lot of hardcore new fans.
So, and give me a sense of, where this goes next and how he's doing now, right? I mean, I think one of the things that it's interesting here is you've had success, but you've had success in a new way, not an old way, right? It's not like it's been an overnight, go to #1, rolling in cash sort of success. So how, given your experience here, where does Fitz go next? But also, what does it tell you about the industry overall? Should we be excited about this new music business, or is it just a grind?
I think it always was a grind. It always should have been a grind. I think what's going on with Fitz right now is we built up a live business, and so we can make a living doing that now. Whereas, it took a lot less work maybe in the past with some quick MTV video and a big monster hit on modern rock radio, which is not as powerful as it used to be. But we have a business now, and I think that's what every artist should try to build up to do and to be.
And maybe a longer term business. I've heard a lot of people say if the old business was quick up, it was just as quick down, and hopefully you've built something that's more sustainable.
No, absolutely think we have. And
what size rooms is he playing now when he headlines?
When he headlines, we're doing anywhere between 1,500, 2,000, in some cases 3,000.
And how quickly have you built up to that?
Look, last year we were headlining Spaceland, which is, I think 300,
right,
and begging to fill that up at that point. So, it's grown over the past year, more so since the January tour that we did. Yeah, we've been surprised in a lot of cool markets.
And what do you think is the driver? Was it that the beyond KCRW radio push that broke you from those 300 seaters to the 1,500 seaters? Would it have been possible to do that without the support at radio that DangerBird was able to help with?
It's possible, but I think it would have taken longer.
Right.
I think in every market, when these guys went in and shook everybody's hands at a radio station early in the morning and impressed them and kicked their ass at the show later that night, we got those ads, and almost, before you know it, we're a hit in that market. So I think
right, and without those ads, you'd have just had to go kick ass in the club and get those people's friends when they come back.
Come back. I mean, right. Radio's been an accelerator for sure, but it's definitely helped build our business.
Let me shift gears here. We have to wrap up in a minute, but I wanted to ask you something else. With Joe, you had a lot of success with iTunes. Mm-hmm. You did a great job, and were able to actually earn enough money to keep things going there. Now Spotify is released in the U.S., been available in Europe for a while. How do the checks compare with what you see from iTunes and Spotify, and how do you feel about that?
Well, iTunes is always here, and the streaming services are about right here, and it has been, whether it's Rhapsody or whatever, Napster, whatever it's been over the past 5-6 years with him. I started to notice that I knew we were available in Europe on Spotify, and I think we've earned probably close to around $3,000 in a year on that. It doesn't seem like much to me.
And comparatively, so if you've gotten $3,000 over the course of a year, what are you getting from iTunes over that same period?
Every month, probably $500 to $800 a month, somewhere in there. Some months are better than others. So, also, I don't think iTunes is as strong as it is here over there, but there's definitely a big difference. Now, it's just me and Joe. We don't have a label. I don't have people on the ground over there. So maybe if there was a label out there who partnered with us on something, maybe it would be a little different, where we'd have a higher profile, more streamers. Who knows?
So does that make you excited for a U.S. release of Spotify, or?
I don't know. I think we're going to do a wait and see. I'll probably keep them on there for a few months, see how it looks. If it looks good, great. We'll keep going with it. If it doesn't, I'm going to pull them off, and we'll keep them where we want to keep them.
Huh. And you think you really can, keep an artist off of Spotify and have that be, not detrimental?
Maybe. Look, I have every single one of Joe's records streaming on his website for free right now.
Right.
So if people discover him like they've been discovering him, whether they discover him on Pandora or wherever it's going to be, they can come to our website and stream the record for free.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just not willing to take a much lower cut than, say, the company that's providing this service, and we're getting pennies and they're getting millions of dollars. We'll see.
Well, hopefully they can drive enough plays to to make it exciting for everybody. I mean, if hopefully they can, and if the social features can make that happen, then that'll be good for everybody.
Well, I think that's the only thing that maybe makes it interesting to me, if they do have a social feature within Facebook, which acts as more of an accelerator, so more people stream and listen. Maybe that'll do something.
Right. So the rate's lower, but if you're getting 10x the listens due to the social amplifier, all the better. And it's more people that you're introducing Joe music to anyway. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate you coming by and saying what's up.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. Please head on over to thisweekinmusic.com/music. Subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.
I feel good, even though I shouldn't. I'm chilling so hard, couldn't tell you where the hood is. I'm looking like $1 million, sucker.